It was the quiet kind of morning that makes you think the world has finally slowed down just for you. I, Hazel Monroe, was sitting in my worn rocking chair in the kitchen of my Jackson home, the sunlight spilling through the blinds onto my hands. The aroma of coffee mingled with faint traces of my old lavender perfume. Life had taught me to appreciate these moments. Calm, steady, uninterrupted. But that calm, I would soon discover, was a fragile illusion. 4 years, I had faithfully managed my health. My prescriptions were lined up neatly in the cabinet, each bottle labeled and scheduled. I had never missed a refill, never ignored a dosage. My children, I thought, respected these boundaries. That's what you believe when you raise them to be kind, responsible, and considerate. My eldest son, Malik, had recently moved back in. Just for a little while, he had said, claiming he was stressed from work and needed time to regroup. I didn't mind. I loved my children and wanted to support them. But slowly, I noticed subtle changes. My headaches were ignored. My joints ached more than usual. And yet, when I asked for my usual prescriptions, the pharmacy seemed off. It started with a missing refill of my blood pressure medication. I shrugged it off at first. Mistakes happen, right? But the pattern continued. My pills were disappearing faster than they should have, and when I confronted Malik, he brushed it off with that charming grin that always got him out of trouble. "Mama, don't worry. I just borrowed them for a little while. You don't need these headaches anyway." I blinked. Borrowed them. For him. My heart sank. My careful, diligent system, the one that had kept me alive and well, was being quietly dismantled. And I realized something terrifying. I wasn't imagining things. He had been taking my medications, my lifeline, for himself, leaving me untreated, fading quietly in my own home. I tried to tell myself it couldn't be true. My Malik wouldn't do something so reckless, so callous. And yet, the evidence kept stacking up. My refill dates didn't match the pharmacy records. Pills I counted meticulously were missing. My own energy was slipping, leaving me dizzy and uncertain. The suspense gnawed at me. How long had he been doing this? For how many months had I been slowly, silently suffering while my own child used my medications to ease his headaches, his stress, his comfort, at my expense? And what would happen if I confronted him and he lied again? That morning, I sat in the kitchen, my hands trembling slightly, the coffee growing cold. I had a choice. Either pretend nothing was happening and slowly let myself weaken, or plan a way to expose the truth and reclaim my life. I knew I couldn't act rashly. Malik was clever, and subtlety was key. The stakes were high. This wasn't just about pills, it was about trust, family, and survival. And I wasn't about to let betrayal steal my life. I glanced at the cabinet where my medications should have been. The bottles gleamed under the sunlight, reminders of what had been taken and what I needed to fight for. I made a quiet vow that day. He would not get away with this. Not quietly. Not easily. The game had begun, and I was ready. A week passed since I first noticed the missing medications, but instead of easing, the anxiety in my chest grew heavier with each passing day. Hazel Monroe doesn't give up easily, and I had always prided myself on my careful record-keeping. Each pill counted, each refill documented, and now the numbers no longer added up. I decided to investigate quietly, careful not to tip Malik off. One afternoon, while he was at work, I went through my refill receipts, pharmacy records, and pill bottles with meticulous attention. The numbers were undeniable. My blood pressure meds, pain relievers, and even a few vitamins were gone. And the refill dates didn't match. Someone had been using them, and it wasn't just a small amount. My stomach sank as the truth became unavoidable. Malik had been taking my prescriptions for months. He had lied, hidden, and put his own comfort above my health. Every moment of fatigue, every dizzy spell, every ache I had tried to shrug off suddenly made sense. The confrontation couldn't wait any longer. That evening, as Malik leaned back on the sofa scrolling through his phone, I walked in slowly, trying to keep my voice calm. "Malik," I began, my hands folded in front of me. "We need to talk." He looked up, grinning like everything was normal. "Sure. Mama. What's up?" I didn't rise to his charm. "Don't play games. I've been checking my prescriptions. Do you want to explain why my medications have been disappearing?" For a moment, he froze. I could see the guilt flicker in his eyes, quickly masked by defensiveness. "Mama, I didn't think it was a big deal. I was stressed. My headaches. I just needed them." I felt my chest tighten. "You needed them? And what about me, Malik? I've been taking care of myself for decades, keeping track of my health so I can stay here, live, and be present for you. And all this time, I've been untreated while you quietly borrowed my medicine." He looked away, mumbling excuses that didn't make sense, trying to justify something that had no justification. The betrayal cut deeper than the missing pills. This wasn't just a lie or a selfish act. This was a deliberate disregard for my well-being, a violation of trust one had spent a lifetime building. My own child had put his comfort above my life. That night, I sat in my bedroom, staring at the empty pill bottles on my nightstand. I felt anger, yes, but beneath it was a quiet, simmering determination. I would not allow Malik's selfishness to go unchallenged. I would make sure he understood the consequences of his actions, without destroying him, but with lessons he could not ignore. I began to plan. Every lie he had told, every deceitful smile, every borrowing of my prescriptions would be accounted for. I made mental notes of pharmacy visits, receipts, and even small details like the times he had said he was too busy to get his own. The evidence was mounting, and soon, the truth would be undeniable. And there was one more thing. I realized that this betrayal wasn't just about medication. It was about respect, boundaries, and realizing that I, Hazel Monroe, was not someone to be underestimated. The storm was coming, and Malik wouldn't see it until it hit. The nights were the hardest. Hazel Monroe's home, once a sanctuary, felt heavy with betrayal. I would lie awake in the dim light of my bedroom, staring at the ceiling, feeling the ache in my joints, the dull throb in my temples, and the quiet sting of knowing my own son had prioritized himself over my health. Malik. My heart was torn between love for my child and fury at his betrayal. I remembered the tiny moments over the months, how I had asked for help picking up prescriptions, how I had reminded him gently about my routines, and how every time he had brushed me off. The realization settled like a stone in my chest. This wasn't an accident. This was selfishness, masked as convenience, and it had left me vulnerable. But Hazel Monroe doesn't break easily. I had survived decades of challenges, loss, and hardship. If anyone could turn betrayal into action, it was me. I began to plan. This wouldn't be revenge born of anger. That would be too hasty. No, this would be calculated, precise, and undeniable. First, I documented everything. Pharmacy receipts, missing refill dates, and small notes I'd kept about my health. Each discrepancy became a piece of a puzzle I intended to complete. I even discreetly spoke to the local pharmacist, explaining my concerns without revealing all the details. I wanted proof, not assumptions. Next, I observed Malik closely. His patterns, his excuses, the times he claimed to need my medications. I listened to every word, noted every detail, and kept my emotions in check. Every lie he told was fuel for what I would do next. Then came the mental rehearsals. I imagined the confrontation, not one fueled by anger, but one that would expose the truth publicly, make it undeniable, and yet leave room for accountability. I pictured Malik's eyes widening in disbelief, the room holding its breath as he realized that deception has consequences. But the most important part of my plan was subtlety. I knew if I acted too soon, he would cover his tracks. I had to wait, be patient, and let the right moment present itself. Every interaction, every casual question, every slight nudge of observation was part of setting the stage. And then there was the emotional strategy. Malik needed to understand the weight of what he had done. Not through humiliation, but through undeniable evidence and the natural reaction of those around him. Witnesses, community members, and even family would become part of this careful orchestration. I also prepared for the personal side of my revenge. I made sure my own health was prioritized again, scheduling doctor visits, refilling medications early, and documenting my recovery. Malik needed to see that the life he had endangered was not broken, only strengthened by vigilance. Every night, as I sipped my herbal tea and watched the Jackson streetlights flicker outside, I repeated my quiet mantra: patience, clarity, and proof. Not anger, not haste. I knew the moment would come when Malik's selfishness would be revealed, and the truth would hit him harder than anything I could say in anger. And when it did, justice wouldn't be loud or cruel. It would be precise, undeniable, and it would teach the lesson he needed to learn, that betrayal has consequences, even in a home built on love. The storm was gathering. I could feel it in my bones, in the tightening of my chest, and in the resolve of my heart. And when it arrived, Malik would finally understand the depth of what he had done. The morning I decided to act, the air in Hazel Monroe's home felt electric, almost alive. I had spent weeks quietly documenting, observing, and planning. Every receipt, every missing pill, every lie Malik had whispered now had a place in my carefully orchestrated plan. Today, the truth would finally have its stage. I invited Malik to the local community center, under the guise of a casual family meeting. He arrived confident, brushing off my tension with a grin that had worked for him too many times before. But today, his charm would fail. Inside, I had set up a display, not for theatrics, but for undeniable clarity. On the table were pharmacy receipts, medication bottles with exact dates of refills, and a timeline of his borrowing. I even had a small binder documenting my own health symptoms: dizziness, headaches, and fatigue caused by untreated medications. Surrounding the display were a few trusted neighbors and family friends who had quietly witnessed my suffering. Malik's eyes widened as he glanced at the table. His grin faltered. What is all this?" he stammered, glancing nervously at the faces around him. I spoke calmly, each word deliberate. "Malik, you've been taking my medications without my consent for months. You've put your comfort above my health. You've lied, hidden, and disregarded the care I've given you your entire life. And this," I gestured to the table, "is the proof." The room was silent, the weight of truth pressing down. No one spoke, just stared. Malik's defensiveness crumbled as neighbors and friends began confirming my observations. Every lie he had counted on to protect him was falling apart. Then came the first twist. One of the community members, Mrs. Langston, held up a bottle of pain relievers she had seen Malik take from my cabinet weeks ago. "I thought you knew, Malik," she said softly. "But clearly she doesn't." His face turned pale. I continued, calm and unwavering. "This isn't about punishment. It's about understanding the consequences of betrayal. You endangered me, Malik. You violated my trust. And now the truth is here, visible to everyone." He tried to speak, to charm, to excuse, but no words came. His carefully constructed excuses were powerless against the evidence, the witnesses, and the undeniable documentation. And then came the second twist, the most personal one. I brought out a small folder with my own medical charts, showing how his actions had directly impacted my health. "This isn't just about pills," I said softly. "It's about life, Malik. You endangered mine. And you need to see the weight of that." Malik's shoulders slumped. For the first time, I saw genuine remorse, not fear of embarrassment, but fear of the truth he had ignored for so long. He realized the depth of what he had done. The final twist was subtle, almost poetic. I handed him an envelope. Inside were instructions for returning the stolen medications, making amends, and rebuilding trust. "You can't erase the past," I said, "but you can choose to act rightly moving forward." The storm had passed, but the lesson lingered. Malik understood that betrayal, no matter how small it seems, has consequences. And Hazel Monroe had not shouted, screamed, or humiliated. she had planned, exposed, and taught. Walking home later that evening, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The house was mine again. My health and dignity were restored. And I knew the lesson would stay with Malik for a lifetime, as it should. The revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. It was deliberate, undeniable, and completely justified. And for the first time in months, Hazel Monroe felt free. The days after the confrontation were quiet, but not empty. Hazel Monroe's home in Jackson finally felt like it belonged to her again. The air was lighter, the sunlight brighter, and for the first time in months, I could breathe without that heavy tension pressing on my chest. Malik had changed. Not instantly, not perfectly, but the guilt was there, visible, tangible, and humbling. He returned the medications he had taken, accompanied me to refill my prescriptions, and began helping around the house in small, meaningful ways. The sly excuses and charming grins were gone. In their place, I saw accountability. I also focused on myself. My health returned to its proper rhythm. I scheduled regular doctor visits, organized my medications meticulously, and reclaimed the routines that had been disrupted. Every small victory reminded me that self-respect and boundaries are non-negotiable. The most surprising outcome, however, was the community support. Neighbors and friends who had quietly witnessed Malik's behavior began checking in, offering kindness, and even sharing stories of how they, too, had faced betrayal or disrespect. My story had sparked awareness, teaching others the importance of vigilance, honesty, and respect within families. Malik eventually apologized sincerely. He didn't just say the words, he acted on them. And for the first time, I felt that the lessons I had planned so carefully had truly sunk in. Betrayal had a cost, but it didn't have to destroy love entirely. Reflecting on everything, I realized something vital. Revenge doesn't have to be loud, cruel, or destructive. The strongest revenge is often quiet, precise, and transformative. I had protected my health, exposed the betrayal, and taught my son a lesson he would never forget, all while maintaining my dignity and peace. Sitting in my kitchen one evening, a cup of tea in hand, I looked out at the Jackson streetlights flickering softly. The house felt warm again. Malik was in the other room, helping with chores without being asked. And I, Hazel Monroe, felt a sense of calm I hadn't known in months. The moral was clear. Boundaries are sacred. Trust is priceless. And respect cannot be borrowed or stolen. It must be given. I had reclaimed my home, my health, and my peace. The storm had passed. And the lesson? It had been learned. What would you do if someone betrayed your trust like this? Would you confront them or wait for the truth to reveal itself? Comment below with your story. Like if Hazel's journey hit home, and subscribe for more dramatic, suspenseful stories from real families.